This rules video is going to be looking at fortresses and sieges and entrenchments. Now, during the game, the player who currently controls a particular city is permitted to use that city's fortress capacity to enter an equal or smaller number of friendly strength points and any number of friendly leaders occupying in the hex in which the city is located. Right, so there are really two types of city. There's the major cities, the ones like Lyon here in red, and they can have a fort capacity of 6. And you have the minor cities like Dijon here, which is in black, which has a fort capacity of 4. At the start of the scenario, a player automatically controls each city in his home country and each country allied to his home country, provided no enemy strength points are initially deployed inside that city. The player whose units are initially deployed inside a city is always considered in control of that city at the start of the scenario. During the alliance phase, if a player gains the allegiance of a major or minor power, he automatically gains control of each city in that power's territory, assuming there are no enemy strength units currently inside any of those cities. Anytime during the game, a player automatically gains control of a city if at least one of his strength points and no enemy strength points occupy the hex in which the city is located. An unoccupied city is considered to be under the control of the last player who controlled it. I tend to use these little control flags just to indicate that when it's maybe not immediately obvious that we can see that Austria controls Venice, even though there's a French force right next to it. Okay, you got fortress markers that come with the game. So let me get one. Okay, so there's a fort marker, so any units that are currently inside the fort would go underneath that marker. On the reverse of that is an entrenchment marker, which we'll discuss in a minute. Important thing to remember about forts is during the movement phase, units inside a city may not be overrun. Normally, if you get a 4-to-1 advantage, you can automatically overrun a unit as long as you pay to enter its hex. During the combat phase, units inside a city may not be attacked if there's any friendly strength points remaining outside the city. They were in the same hex. They've got to be engaged in a field battle. At the start of a combat round, the player who controls the city has 2 options if his units are attacked. All units may be deployed outside the city and committed to a field battle, or any number of strength points equal to or less the city fort capacity, as well as any leaders may be placed inside the city. Right, at the start of any round of combat, if all enemy strength points in a hex are inside the city, the attacking player has 2 options. The units inside the city may be assaulted, the units inside the city may be besieged. City assault is basically the same as a field battle, except the strength of the units inside the city are doubled. Units possessing a basic morale 0 are considered to possess a morale of 1 when inside the city. If this unit value is reduced to 0, all defenders are immediately eliminated. The dice roll used to resolve the assault combat is not modified for terrain effects or entrenchments. City siege. At the start of any round of combat, if all enemy strength points in a hex are inside the city, and the attacking player may immediately advance any or all of his attacking units into the hex to besiege the city. The besieging force may include units which advanced into the city hex after combat from another hex. For the siege to go ahead, the minimum strength to besiege is required. That occurs if there are an equal or greater number of supplied enemy points which occupy the same hex as the city. At the end of the first round of combat in which the city is besieged, the besieging player places a 1 numerical unit Now these are your units for recording cities and number of turns besieged, and that can go up to 5. There is no 6. At the end of each besieging player's combat phase, the numerical marker is increased from 1 by 1, etc., from 1 to 2, etc. Besieged city surrender. Immediately after placing the appropriate marker on a besieged city, the besieged player rolls a single dice. If the result is equal to or less than the number on the marker, all the units are immediately eliminated. In the grand campaign, they are considered to surrender, and they are treated as prisoners of war. As I said, there's no 6 marker, thus a siege may continue indefinitely. While a city is besieged, no units inside the city may leave the hex, and no additional units of the besieged may enter the city. Besieged units, however, may deploy outside the city and attempt to break the siege by initiating a field battle. If a field battle does not eliminate the besieging force or causes it to retreat, the besieged units may only retreat back into the city and still considered besieged. At the end of a combat phase, the besieging player cannot meet the minimum strength of besiegers condition given, which I've already mentioned. The siege is considered broken, the numerical marker is removed from the map, and the besieging force must immediately withdraw from the city hex. During the attrition phase, when active players' units are inside a besieged city, the attrition roll is increased by the number of the numerical siege marker. When a city is besieged, friendly units may engage in combat with the besieging force. A friendly unit outside the city initiates combat with the besieging force. The besieged force inside the city may attempt to reinforce that conflict. If the besieged force inside the city initiates combat, the friendly forces outside the city may attempt to reinforce that combat. If the besieging force withdraws or retreats, it must leave the hex. If the besieged are defeated, they retreat or withdraw into the city, even if a relief force from outside the city was involved in the field battle. Next bit, we'll have a quick look at entrenchments. During the movement phase, the active player may entrench any friendly force of 3 or more strength points which remain stationary by placing an entrenchment marker on it. Okay. The effects of the entrenchment marker in combat: if the smaller force is attacked and it's entrenched, the die result is decreased by 1. If a larger force is attacked in a hex containing an entrenchment marker, the die roll is increased by 1. During the movement phase or combat phase, when entrenchment marker, when the entrenched force vacates a hex, the entrenchment marker is immediately removed from the map. You can't place entrenchment markers in a hex containing a major city or a capital city, so you could do it on a minor city. Okay, that's it.